I thought I was finally getting a second chance. After 20 years of barely speaking to my son, a distance carved by my own absence, I was invited to my grandson's 10th birthday party. 10 years. I had missed 10 birthdays, 10 candles, 10 moments I could never get back. This was my shot to fix what I had broken. I spent 3 days finding the perfect gift, a limited edition teddy bear that cost me $325, the exact one my grandson had once pointed at in a store window. I imagined his face lighting up, maybe even calling me Grandpa again. But when I walked into that restaurant, bright balloons, cake layered with strawberries, and 30 pairs of eyes, my son stood up. He didn't thank me for coming. He didn't smile. In a voice loud enough for the whole room to hear, he said, "From today, you are no longer part of this family." The air left my lungs. I was frozen, still clutching the wrapped gift in my hands, as if holding it could anchor me to the floor. People stared. My grandson's eyes darted between us, confused. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. They think they know why I wasn't there all those years. They think I chose my work over them. But there's something they don't know, something that could change everything. And by the time I finally reveal it, the person who hurt me most will have to face a truth they've avoided for decades. I was 38 when the divorce papers were signed. My son, Michael, was 12 then, still small enough to believe that superheroes were real, still looking for one in me. I told myself I was doing the right thing. Working long hours, chasing promotions, signing contracts worth 6 figures. I convinced myself that every late night at the office was for him, that missing baseball games, school plays, and Saturday mornings together would all be justified when I could give him the best education, the best life. The truth was uglier. Work was easier than home. A meeting didn't look at me with disappointment. A contract didn't ask why I missed another dinner. My ex-wife, Laura, stopped fighting with me about it after a while. She just grew quieter. Michael, too. Silence filled our home like dust, unnoticed until it choked us. After the divorce, Laura took primary custody. I got weekends, every other holiday, and the illusion of shared parenting. At first, I tried to make those weekends count. Trips to the zoo, the movies, the beach. But the calls from work didn't stop. There was always an emergency, always a client who couldn't wait. Eventually, Michael stopped asking if I would come to his games. He stopped telling me when they were. I told myself, kids forget these things. I told myself he'd understand when he was older. Years passed. The boy who once ran into my arms became a teenager who barely looked up from his phone. When I called, I got short answers, sometimes none at all. I missed his high school graduation because I was in Chicago, closing a deal I no longer even remember. That night, I sat in my hotel room, staring at the pictures Laura sent me. Michael in his cap and gown, standing between his mother and a man I didn't know. By the time I turned 60, I had everything I thought I wanted. A house in the suburbs, a pension that could keep me comfortable for the rest of my life, a golf membership, but I had no one to share it with. Michael had a family of his own now, a wife, a son, and I was a shadow at the edge of their lives. Then, 3 years ago, Laura got sick. The kind of sickness you don't recover from. Cancer took her faster than anyone expected. I visited her in the hospital only once. She was thin, pale, but her eyes were sharp when she looked at me. "You still have time," she said. "Time for what?" I asked, though I knew. Michael, she whispered, don't waste it like you did with me. That was the last thing she ever said to me. After she passed, I thought about those words every night. I remembered the birthdays I missed, the school events I skipped, the moments I chose work over my own family. And now, with her gone, there was no one left between me and Michael. No buffer, no excuse. I started small, sending cards on his birthday, calling on holidays. Sometimes he picked up. Most times he didn't. When he did, the conversations were polite but cold, as if I were a distant relative, not his father. I met my grandson, Ethan, only once, when he was 5. He clung to his mother's leg the whole time, glancing at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered in by mistake. Still, I didn't give up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing a contract or a promotion. I was chasing something harder, redemption. I didn't know if Michael would ever forgive me, but I knew I had to try. So when the call came, a simple voicemail from Michael saying, "Dad, Ethan's birthday's next week. You can come if you want." It felt like sunlight breaking through a long winter. I replayed that message 3 times, just to be sure I'd heard it right. This was it. The chance Laura had told me not to waste. I spent the next few days walking around in a kind of daze. The voicemail from Michael kept playing in my mind, like a song you can't turn off. His voice was even, almost casual, but to me, it was a lifeline. He had invited me, not out of obligation, not because someone forced his hand, but because he had thought about it and made the call. I told myself this was the opening I'd been waiting for. This was my chance to prove I could be present, to show Ethan I wasn't just a shadow from the past. The first step was the gift. I didn't want to show up with something generic. I wanted Ethan to know I'd been paying attention. 3 years ago, during that brief and awkward visit, I had taken him to a toy store. He'd stopped in front of a shelf, his little hands pressed against the glass, staring at a plush teddy bear in a blue sailor's jacket. The tag had said, "Limited edition, only 500 made." I'd looked at the price, $325, and told him maybe next time. There was no next time. I called every store I could find, searched online auctions, and finally tracked one down in a collector's shop 2 towns over. The owner told me they had just one left, still in the box. I drove there the same day, paid in cash, and asked them to wrap it in dark blue paper with a silver ribbon. The morning of the party, I shaved carefully, polished my shoes, and chose the navy suit I used to wear for big business meetings. I wanted to look like a man Ethan could be proud to call his grandfather. I tucked the wrapped bear under my arm and headed to the restaurant. It was one of those upscale family places with white tablecloths and polished wooden floors. Through the large windows, I could see clusters of balloons tied to the chairs, their colors matching the cake I caught a glimpse of. White frosting with bright red strawberries arranged in perfect circles. When I stepped inside, a hostess greeted me with a smile and led me toward a long table near the back. My pulse quickened. Michael was there, standing at the head of the table. His wife, Claire, sat beside him, and Ethan was in the middle, wearing a paper crown. He looked taller than I remembered, his hair a little longer, the crown slightly askew on his head. For a moment, my chest tightened with pride. "Dad," Michael said when I approached. His voice was polite, measured. He extended his hand, and I shook it. There was a small smile on his lips, but his eyes were guarded, calm, but unreadable. "Happy birthday, Ethan," I said, crouching down to meet my grandson's eyes. He glanced at me, then at the gift in my hands. His fingers twitched toward it before Claire gently rested a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," he said softly, almost like a question. The other guests, cousins, friends, people I didn't recognize, greeted me with nods or polite smiles. For the first time in years, I felt like I was sitting at the same table as my family. The chatter was warm, the clink of glasses, and the soft background music making it feel almost like old times. I let myself believe, just for a while, that maybe the ice was melting. Michael even introduced me to a few people as my dad. That word, dad, was like a balm I didn't know I'd been starving for. The food came, and I joined in the small talk, careful not to push too hard. I told a funny story about getting lost on the way to the restaurant, earning a chuckle from someone down the table. I caught Ethan watching me once or twice, his eyes darting away when I smiled. I thought maybe, just maybe, the wall between us was starting to crack. Halfway through the meal, Michael leaned toward me. "Thanks for coming, Dad," he said, his tone flat, but his words polite. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. And I meant it. I imagined how the rest of the day might go, giving Ethan the bear, watching him tear off the wrapping paper, seeing his face light up. Maybe we'd even take a picture together, something I could frame and keep on my mantle. For the first time in decades, I felt like I was on the verge of getting it right. The plates had been cleared, and the cake was brought out. A tall, three-tiered masterpiece with the same strawberries I'd noticed earlier, arranged like jewels. Claire lit the candles while Ethan beamed, his paper crown slipping forward over his eyes. The chatter quieted, replaced by the soft hum of "Happy Birthday" sung by everyone at the table. I sang too, my voice low but steady, trying to blend into the moment without drawing too much attention. This was Ethan's day, and I wanted to be part of it without making it about me. Michael stood up, holding a glass of champagne. The room stilled. It was clear he was about to make a toast. I settled back in my chair, a small smile on my face, my hand resting on the wrapped gift beside me. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Ethan turning 10, Michael began. His voice carried easily over the room, confident, warm. "It means a lot to us to have friends and family together for this special day," I nodded, feeling a quiet swell of pride. "And," he continued, "it's important to recognize the people who have been there for us. Not just today, but through the years." He glanced briefly in my direction, and for a fleeting second, I thought he was about to acknowledge me. My chest tightened with anticipation. "But," Michael said, his tone shifting slightly, "there are also people who have chosen not to be part of our lives. People who had the chance to be there and didn't take it. People who, for years, put everything else ahead of their family." The words hit me like a slow, cold wave. My smile faltered. A murmur ran through the guests, but Michael's eyes stayed fixed on me. "And from today forward," he said, his voice now firm and unmistakably clear, "you are no longer part of this family." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. The clinking of cutlery, the laughter, the warmth in the air, all of it vanished into a heavy silence. Every face at the table turned toward me. I could feel the heat of the overhead lights bearing down, see the reflection of my own stunned face in the polished surface of my glass. Ethan's fork hovered in midair, his eyes wide and uncertain. Claire kept her gaze fixed on the tablecloth. I swallowed, my throat dry. "Michael," I began, but the word cracked in my mouth. He didn't respond, didn't explain. He just lowered his glass, turned his attention back to the cake, and said, "All right, buddy, blow out your candles." It was as if I had been erased from the room. Conversation resumed, but not toward me. People whispered to each other, glancing in my direction when they thought I wasn't looking. I could feel the heat in my ears, the blood pounding in my temples. I sat there for a few seconds more, staring at the blue paper-wrapped gift on my lap. My fingers dug into the ribbon. I wanted to give it to Ethan, to tell him it was for him, and that I'd thought about it for weeks. But how could I, after that? My chair scraped against the wooden floor as I stood. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the room. I didn't look at anyone directly. I didn't trust myself to speak without my voice shaking. I walked toward the door, the murmurs following me like a shadow. Outside, the cool air hit my face, sharp and biting. I kept walking until I reached the edge of the parking lot. My car was parked under a flickering street lamp. I unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. Inside the restaurant, the party was still going on. I could hear faint music, bursts of laughter when someone must have made a joke. None of it was for me. I rested my hands on the wrapped bear. The ribbon was still perfect, the paper uncreased. In my mind, I saw Ethan holding it, smiling the way he had in that toy store years ago, but that image was swallowed by the memory of Michael's voice, sharp and deliberate. "You are no longer part of this family." It didn't make sense. Why invite me only to humiliate me? Why let me think there was a chance, only to slam the door shut in front of everyone? I started the car, but didn't drive away. Not yet. My hands gripped the wheel, my chest tight. Somewhere deep down, anger began to stir, pushing against the hurt. If Michael thought this was the end, he was wrong. 2 days passed before I spoke to anyone. I spent most of that time in my kitchen, nursing cups of coffee gone cold, staring at the unopened gift on the counter. The words from Michael's toast replayed in my head like a broken record. On the third evening, I got a call from Tom Jenkins, an old friend from my sales days. Tom had been at the party. He was Claire's uncle by marriage, which I'd almost forgotten. "Henry," he said, his voice hesitant, "I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I feel like you deserve to know why Michael. Why he did that?" "I'd appreciate that," I said, my voice low. Tom sighed. "It was years ago. Michael must have been 16. He called you one night, said he needed you to come pick him up from somewhere. He wouldn't say why, but he sounded scared. Said it was urgent. I tried to remember, but nothing came immediately." "You didn't answer," Tom went on. "He said he left 3 voicemails. Eventually he called me. I drove out to get him, found him sitting outside some gas station, shaking. He never told me what happened before I got there, but after that, he stopped talking about you, stopped even trying." The memory slammed into me. Me, in a conference room in Dallas, my phone buzzing in my pocket during a tense negotiation. I'd silenced it, thinking I'd call back later. I never did. I told myself it couldn't have been important if he hadn't called twice in a row. I didn't know there were 3 voicemails waiting. I leaned against the counter, the weight of it pressing down. Why didn't he tell me? Maybe because, in his mind, "You already had your answer," Tom said softly. Work came first. When I hung up, the shame settled in my chest like a stone. I'd been telling myself that my absence was a slow drift, an accident. But this was a moment, a point in time where I'd made a choice, and it had cut deep. I couldn't leave it like that. I needed to tell Michael I remembered, that I was sorry, that I hadn't understood what it had meant to him. That night, I drove to his house. The porch light was on, and through the window, I could see him sitting at the kitchen table with a laptop. He looked up when I knocked, his expression unreadable. "Dad?" he said when he opened the door, not stepping aside to let me in. "I just need 5 minutes," I said. "I heard about that night, when you called me and I didn't answer. I was in a meeting, I thought." "You thought work was more important," he cut in. His tone was flat, but there was an edge beneath it. "I didn't know you needed me like that. I didn't know you were in trouble. If I had..." "You would have done what? Left the meeting? Canceled the deal? You've never done that for me, Dad. Not once." I swallowed, forcing myself not to look away. "I can't change that night, but I can tell you I regret it more than..." "Regret?" He laughed, short and bitter. "You think this is just about one night? That's just the easiest example." I stayed silent, letting him speak. He looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You know why Mom left you, right?" I nodded. "Because I was never home." "That's part of it, but it's not the whole story." His gaze hardened. "She told me the truth before she died. She didn't just leave because you worked too much. She left because you cheated on her." The words hit me harder than anything at that party. "That's not..." I started, but stopped. "Don't bother denying it," he said. "She told me everything. About the woman from your office, about the nights you didn't come home, about how she found the receipts for hotel rooms." I opened my mouth, but no words came. My mind reeled, scrambling for the right thing to say, for some explanation that could untangle the knot forming between us. "Even if that's not how you remember it," Michael went on, "that's how she lived it, and that's how I've lived it. So don't come here talking about redemption. You lost that chance a long time ago." He stepped back and closed the door, the click of the latch echoing in my ears. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wood grain of the door, the porch light casting a pale glow over everything. The cool night air stung my skin, but I barely felt it. Was he right? Had I crossed a line I'd buried so deep even I didn't want to remember it? Or was this another misunderstanding, another wound that had festered too long to heal? For the first time since the party, I felt something other than shame or hurt. I felt doubt. And that, more than anything, scared me. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Michael's accusations echoing in my head. I needed to know the truth. Not just my version, not just his. The truth. The next morning, I drove to the storage unit where I'd kept the boxes from my old house. Laura's things were still there, untouched, since the day I'd packed them away after the divorce. Dust coated the cardboard like a fine layer of frost. I opened one box and found her old journals, small, leather-bound notebooks with the worn edges of something that had been handled often. I sat on the cold concrete floor, flipping through pages filled with her neat, looping handwriting. Most entries were about day-to-day life. Michael's school projects, the weather, recipes she wanted to try. But then, near the end of one book, the tone shifted. "I've decided not to tell Henry. The diagnosis is final. Stage 4. I don't want him to see me fade away. I'd rather he remember me as I was, Strong, beautiful, not this shell I'm becoming. He wouldn't be able to handle it. He'd try to fix it, and there is no fixing this. I turned the page with shaking hands. I told Michael we were separating because of his father's absence. It's partly true, but the real reason is I want them both to move on without watching me die. He's too young to carry that memory. I hope someday he'll understand. I closed the journal, my chest tight. All these years, Michael had been carrying the wrong story, and I had never thought to correct it because I never knew. The next day, I went to Ethan's school. I'd called ahead, asking the front office if I could drop something off for him. They agreed to let me wait in the courtyard during his lunch break. When he appeared, backpack slung over one shoulder, I felt an ache I couldn't name. He looked so much like Michael at that age, it was like staring through time. "Hey, buddy," I said as he approached. I handed him the blue-wrapped box. "This was supposed to be for your birthday. I didn't get the chance to give it to you." He took it cautiously, glancing at the ribbon before looking back at me. "Mom said you had to leave the party." "Yeah," I said softly. "Things got complicated." He hesitated, then began peeling back the wrapping. When the sailor bear emerged from the box, his eyes widened. "This is the one from the store," he whispered. "I remembered," I said, "even if it took me a while." He hugged the bear to his chest, then looked at me with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. "Why doesn't Dad like you?" I took a breath. "Because he was told a story about me that wasn't true. Your grandma. She left because she was sick, not because of something bad I did. She didn't want either of us to see her get weaker. She thought it would be easier for us if we didn't know." Ethan's brow furrowed. "So, Dad's wrong." "Not wrong on purpose," I said, "just hurt. And when people are hurt, they sometimes hold on to things they believe, even if those things aren't the whole truth." For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he stepped forward and hugged me, his small arms tight around my waist. "I'm glad you came today," he said. I swallowed hard, patting his back. "Me too, kiddo." From the corner of my eye, I caught movement. Michael stood by the school gate, watching us. His face was unreadable, but he didn't walk away. He stayed there, hands in his pockets, as if weighing something. Ethan pulled back, still clutching the bear. "Will you come to my next birthday?" "If you want me there," I said. He nodded, then turned toward the building when the bell rang. I looked back at the gate. Michael was still there, his eyes fixed on me. For a second I thought he might come over, that he might say something, anything. But then the bell rang again, and he turned away, disappearing into the parking lot. I stood there in the courtyard, the weight of the journal still in my bag, knowing the truth had finally surfaced, but also knowing that truth alone might not be enough to fix what was broken. It was 2 days after seeing Ethan at school when I heard the knock at my door. A slow, deliberate sound, 3 times, then silence. I opened it to find Michael standing there. He wasn't in a hurry to speak, and neither was I. The late afternoon light cast a warm, slanting glow over the porch, but his face was unreadable. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside, gesturing toward the living room. He didn't sit, just stood near the window, looking out at the street, as if weighing every word before he spoke. "You gave Ethan the bear," he said finally. "Yes," I said. "It was for his birthday." He nodded once, still staring outside. Then without turning, he asked, "If, all those years ago, you had chosen us, chosen your family, over your job, would everything have been different? The question settled between us like dust in a still room. I didn't rush to answer. Maybe, I said at last. I can't pretend it wouldn't have mattered, but I also can't go back. What I can do is be here now, for however much time we have left. Michael finally turned to face me. His eyes weren't angry the way they'd been at the party, but they weren't soft either. You know I can't just forget everything, he said. I'm not asking you to forget, I replied. I'm asking you to let me prove I can be different. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet was filled only by the ticking of the old clock on the wall, a sound I'd stopped noticing years ago. Then Michael stepped closer. He extended his hand slowly, as if unsure whether I'd take it. I did. His grip was firm, not warm, but there was no hostility in it. It was a handshake between two men who had fought too long and were too tired to keep fighting. The front door opened, and Ethan burst in, his backpack bouncing against his side. He froze when he saw us. Then, without hesitation, he ran over and grabbed both our hands, trying to connect them together like puzzle pieces. Are you friends now? He asked, his voice bright with hope. Michael glanced down at him, then at me. We're trying, he said. Ethan grinned, apparently satisfied with that answer. Good, because I want you both at my next baseball game. Michael's hand didn't pull away from mine. That small detail lodged itself in my chest like a spark of warmth. After Ethan left the room to dig through the fridge, Michael and I stood there a moment longer. There are things I can't unhear, he said quietly. Things I still believe about the past, but maybe I don't have the full picture. I'm willing to see where this goes. That's all I could ask for, I said. He nodded once and turned toward the door. Before stepping out, he looked back. Don't make me regret this. When the door closed behind him, I sank into the chair by the window. My hands were still warm from the handshake, but my mind was tangled. This wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a clean slate. It was something in between. A fragile bridge stretched over years of silence and pain. I watched through the glass as Michael and Ethan walked to the car. Halfway down the path, Ethan turned and waved, the bear tucked under one arm. I waved back, my throat tightening. As they drove away, I wondered if time could really mend what had been broken for so long, or if some wounds simply stayed raw beneath the surface, no matter how many handshakes or promises were exchanged. For now, all I had was the hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something better. But the question lingered, stubborn and unresolved. Would the wound ever truly heal?